welcome to the first episode of our Agile podcast series. Kicking things off, we have with us our first guest, and I couldn't be more excited. She's someone who's been making waves in the HR industry for more than a decade. She brings with her a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. And that makes her a perfect guest for today to explore this intersection of Agile and HR. Please join me in welcoming Kirti Sharma. Welcome, Kirti.
Hi, Angana. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'd like to begin by asking you, how did this journey of HR and Agile start for you at To The New?
I think it was back in 2017. That was the time when we started our HR digital transformation journey within the organization, within To The New. And the first set of application under Newer's World, our internal applications, that had begun. I was playing a role of a product owner then, and that was a time that I worked very closely with the delivery team.
Okay.
I understood how the delivery teams operated, how they took requirements from the different stakeholders, collaborated with them to bring in solutions, and also kind of lot of complex scenarios were brought down into smaller modules and more workable deliverables, which were then delegated to the team. That is when I think the curiosity started that something so successful and widely popular amongst the delivery team, why can it not be used in non-tech functions, right? So I think curiosity led to some reading, and I was lucky enough to find some literature on it which already existed of how Agile could be implemented in HR, and I think that is where the journey began.
Okay, so I don't think I'd be wrong when I say that this was a perfectly placed opportunity that came your way. While,
Right.
of course, you had the chance to work in such a complex project, but also you took full advantage of that by extending those learning into something like HR department.
Absolutely.
So what I want to know is, because this is so new and it's an uncharted territory, was there any kind of a fear or apprehension that you had that, oh, what if this doesn't work or if things fall apart?
I won't say fear, I think I was more excited to implement it because again, as I mentioned, something which is so successful or which is working so seamlessly with the delivery teams, I think if not entirely, but making some tweaks to it, it should be workable in non-tech functions also.
Right.
So, and even if, Angana, even if we failed, I think we could always go back to something which already existed in the past. So I think I would say I was more excited to implement it than being afraid of it being a failure.
So a lot of our audience watching this podcast, including myself, would have a fair sense of understanding of how Agile is implemented in technology teams or the typical delivery model setup.
Right.
But I wonder how Agile could be implemented in a place like HR.
Okay, so in a typical tech delivery team, I think the starting point for us would be understanding the requirements from the clients, right? Our business requirement documents would form the initial stage. From there on, we would, probably create, we will have estimations done, we will create different modules, break it down into epics, user stories, and then, sprint planning and tickets and so on and so forth. So if I draw parallels for HR team, I think the starting point would be our annual functional objectives that we are supposed to achieve. So from there, we would create the backlog for us, which would then again be divided into quarterly or monthly objectives, and then we would move into again, sprints and tickets and so on and so forth. So in a HR function, typically anybody who is playing a role of a HR business partner in operation would be engaged in two broad kind of activities. One is business as usual activities, right? For example, I'm an HR business partner, so I would be resolving people's queries, or I would be resolving their grievances or connecting with them, doing one-on-one discussions. This is business as usual. While there could be different people, but the activities remain the same. In addition to this, there could be some initiatives that they would be taking care of, right? Starting a new practice for that matter. So that would come down into modules and tickets and user stories. So that is a backlog for them.
Okay, so what you're saying is this is how things work internally, like
Right.
within the HR team. So do you also have cases where Agile principles could be used externally, as in designing the people initiatives?
When we look at building practices or starting something new, that is where the spirit of Agile would come in, you know. So just to give you an instance, for example, when we're designing initiatives, we would want to, always look at that feedback or things are more real time than frequency driven. So for example, if we look at our recognition practice, so recognitions are peer-to-peer, they're more instant. The idea is to give instant gratification. I'm not waiting for a year for a ceremony to happen, right? Similarly, check-ins. We are saying that we should connect with people on a one-on-one discussion more frequently than waiting for a review cycle. Why? Those practices are in place. Second, we try to do a lot of POCs, speaking to stakeholders. So that is again an agile principles that before going big bang, test it out with your audience, right? So the Future Leaders program that we did, we ran a pilot batch before that, before we went actually live into, to a structured version of it. I think so. So these are some of the, the principles, the spirit of the Agile, which is then inculcated into different initiatives that we're doing.
Okay, so great to know. What level of detail can you get into? I mean, do you even have those ceremonies like Scrum, retro, or a planning?
Yes, we do, Angana. We have typically sprint meetings every 2 weeks, a sprint retrospective discussions. So I think while all of us would know what happens in a sprint retrospective meeting, I'll talk about the things that we do differently. So within, when we are doing a sprint retrospective meeting, we have the team members play the role of a Scrum Master. It is not me who kind of drives those discussions every time. Okay. So the idea here is that these sprint owners, whom we call them sprint owners internally, they would go and talk to different stakeholders. They would talk to different team members and understand what are things that they were working on, what is it that is delivered, what is not, and why it could not be delivered. And these people would then come back and drive these discussions. So it is a wonderful opportunity for the team to understand what is happening at a function level. At times we are consumed in what we are doing and we are not able to take a bird's eye view of where the function is headed. Second would be probably the way we plan our sprints. So when we are doing estimations for projects and initiatives, typically we would follow somewhat similar approaches that a tech delivery team would follow. Like we would have 3-point method, or we would have Fibonacci sequence to have these estimations defined. So probably something similar there, but when it comes to business as usual activities, we have a lot of data with respect to what are the time log for previous activities of similar nature. We have done 160 sprints so far. Oh, wow. So not only it helps us give better estimates because we have that data, but we also know at what points in the last year I saw a spike in something. Third, of course, we discuss in every sprint retrospective, like any delivery team would talk about sprint velocity. We would also talk about how the team has performed, how individually what has been our completion rates, and there is a specific completion rate that is expected out of every person in the team. This eventually flows down into their objectives, that you are supposed to have at least this much completion rate in your sprints in an average of last 6 months. So these are some of the things that we have kind of incorporated in our meetings. Apart from this, I think general ones like open acknowledgement or sprint champions, whosoever outperformed in the last 2 sprints, we recognize those people. We do have learning sessions as well, which the Scrum Masters own, wherein they would talk about any practice or process that the team takes care of and share the knowledge with the different team members.
Okay, wow. Not very different from how Agile works in the tech teams. I mean, I can draw parallels here and there because even in case of a typical tech team, we do have velocity, which we see how the velocity has been in the past sprints and then calculated for the upcoming sprint as well.
Right.
How easy or difficult is it for you to get the buy-in of your team members, or any kind of challenge that you would like to share with us?
So I think when somebody is joining a tech team or a delivery team, they would still have idea about Agile or how typically delivery teams function. But when people come into HR team and they see Agile, Agile principles or Agile methodologies being used, practices being used, it is something that they're not aware of. So initially, it is very surprising for people to see that sprints are being planned. They feel that, okay, you're micromanaging us, that we would want to have, probably where you're spending your time, which activities you did. But the idea is more about driving efficiencies, having, being more productive, being able to figure out which are the processes where, we are probably taking a lot of time, or there is a reskilling required for that matter. So the idea is more to drive these, decisions than to actually look at who is doing what. But yes, changing people's mindset initially does become a challenge.
All right. That was very insightful. Now it's time for some fun. It's the rapid fire segment. Are you ready for it?
Sure, Ranna.
All right, your first question. If you had the chance to track any one of these with the burn down chart, what would it be? Number of calories burned per day or the number of books read per month?
Number of books read per month.
All right. If you could hire an agile coach for free, which area of your life would that be for? Personal finance management, relationships and social media, or fitness and health?
That's a tricky one, but I'd go for personal finance management.
All right. If your life were to be a Kanban board, what would fall under the work in progress column?
I think the whole of me would fall in the work in progress column, because I think we're all work in progress. So
Right.
I think I'd put myself there.
Perfect. If you could create a backlog for personal development, what would the top 3 priority items be?
Personal development. I think I would probably want to focus more on my health, my fitness. Again, a holistic view of the health. And second, I would probably want to get to read as much as I can.
Great. So we don't know what the third priority is.
Probably
We'll see
These are top 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you could choose any of these gadgets, which one would you go for? A fitness tracker that gives you continuous feedback to achieve your transformation goals,
Okay.
or a smart fridge that perfectly plans your grocery shopping and automatically alerts you when you're out of stock?
Smart fridge for sure.
Any day.
Any day.
All right. That's a wrap for today's episode. A big thank you to Kirti for taking time out and sharing your insights and experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Angana. Thank you for having me.